According to the A.T. Nelson Company, the average American watches an average of 4 or more hours per day. I'm sure all of you at one time or another have spent a good time glued to the TV set. Because people of all different age groups, ethnicities, and religions watch TV and movies daily, there have been censorship laws for nearly a century monitoring exactly what we're allowed to watch. I'm going to go through a timeline of censorship laws so you can see just how much they have changed and what laws we are still under today. In a Journal of American History, Volume 17, Number 1, published by Organization of American Historians in June 1990, an article titled Morality and Entertainment, The Origins of the Motion Picture Production Code by Stephen Vaughn shows us how even before the official codes and laws, censorship was well at work. As early as 1908, Chicago police refused to permit Nickelodeon to show Knight Riders because it encouraged malicious mischief, arson, and murder. Both New Jersey and New York banned the showing of The Naked Truth in 1924 because it dealt with disease. And in 1929, Alabama banned The Road to Ruin, which dealt with female drinking and abortion. Finally, in 1930, the Motion Picture Production Code, also known as the Hays Code, was adopted, monitoring what was acceptable for the public audience to see in movies. There were many things forbidden to be shown underneath this code. Among them were the use of any profanity, among these words being the words God, Jesus Christ, or Lord, scenes of childbirth, ridicule of the clergy, willful offense to any nation, nudity, sexual relationships among different races, the illegal traffic of drugs, sex hygiene, diseases, and more. And furthermore, special care must be taken in the reference to police officers, the flag, marriage, a man and woman in bed together, lustful kissing, the use of drugs, surgical operations, cruelty to children and animals, and more. Then, in 1934, the Production Code Administration was created and required that all films must obtain a certificate of approval before being released. The PCA was headed by Joseph Green, who made the code very strict and rigid. For example, underneath this code, films about Nazi Germany were restricted. On CNN.com, in an article called A Timeline of TV Censorship, written by Ian Lendler on July 31st, 2007, we see that in 1942, Tweety Bird first appeared on A Tale of Two Kitties. He was originally drawn by the animator without feathers, but the Hays Office Censorship Bureau thought the bird looked too naked and insisted Tweety be covered with feathers. In 1952, the production code began to dwindle when the Supreme Court overruled its 1915 decision and decided that motion pictures were entitled to First Amendment rights. With the growing rise of television, the National Association of Radio and Television Broadcasters ratified a new television code in 1952, establishing guidelines of what content would be allowed on television. Also in the timeline of TV censorship, we see that in the same year, during Lucille Ball's pregnancy, during an entire season of I Love Lucy, the actual word pregnant is not allowed. Instead, the show uses phrases such as with child, having a baby, and expecting. Also, when Elvis first appeared on the Ed Sullivan Show in 1956, along with his trademark hip gyrations, the camera switched to a close-up on his face to not overstimulate the public. When Elvis reappeared on the show the following year, he was only filmed from the waist up. By the late 1960s, the production code was completely abandoned and a new way to monitor TV and movies was created. Now we're going to talk about how the MPAA rating system went into effect November 1st, 1968. According to West Encyclopedia of American Law, the Motion Picture Association of America, or MPAA, regulated itself through a voluntary rating system. These ratings are G, PG, PG-13, R, and X. In worry of children's television content, Congress passed the Children's Television Act of 1990, which limits the amount of advertising on children's television stations. The Television Violence Act was signed into law by George H.W. Bush the same year and expired in 1993. This act was intended to limit the amount of violence shown on television, but was criticized as government regulating unpopular ideas. Then, in 1996, under the Telecommunications Act, parents now have the power to control what their children watch and can block out violent or sexual content. Although we have come a long way since the beginning of movie and television censorship, there are still restrictions creators must uphold by today. TV parental guidelines were proposed in 1998. The TV rating system is mostly the same as the movie rating system, but MA, standing for mature, in TV would be an R for a movie rating. According to the Federal Communications Commission, updated June 2000, this program is specifically designed to be viewed by adults and therefore may be unsuitable for children underneath 17. This program contains one or more of the following: graphic violence, explicit sexual activity, or crude, indecent language. Programs rated TV mature would usually only be on cable and satellite television. Network television rarely airs any programming that would warrant such a rating due to FCC or the Federal Communications Commission's indecency and obscenity guidelines that prevent most of this type of programming from airing on broadcast television. Basic television does not allow any full frontal nudity, any sexual organs to be shown. Curse words are permitted at the discretion of the television channel. Some channels, like Disney, for obvious reasons, allow none. So first we went through the build-up of the major television codes, then the timeline of television censorship, and finally where we are today. We have come a long way from 1908, but still, when Janet Jackson's famous nipple slip aired for 1.01 seconds during the Super Bowl 39, more than 500,000 Americans called the network to complain, according to CNN, along with 50 Canadians. CBS was fined $500,000 by the FCC, and the NFL would cost $10 million in sponsor refunds. There will always be people on the other side of the television modesty field, and that is why television restrictions are such a big part of our society today.